Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Lunch with Lynn Faculty Webinar Series. I'm excited you're here today with me, and we're going to go ahead and get started. Today, this webinar is for anyone who uses Canvas for grading. So whether you're an on-campus faculty member or an online faculty member, if you're using Canvas for receiving and grading student work, this webinar is for you. So today we're focusing on SpeedGrader, and this will be kind of fast and furious. I'm going to give a broad overview of the SpeedGrader tool within Canvas. I'll do kind of a walkthrough, show and tell, and then I will actually give some recommendations for feedback type and where to place that feedback. And today is all about helping you with efficiency, speed, and just making it easier and quicker for you to grade items within Canvas. We all know that grading is part of teaching, and it's not always our favorite part all the time, but we want to make sure that we're giving students feedback that they can use to then become to do better work in our classes. So this is quicker and more efficient for you and better quality feedback for students. You can use the chat option as we go through today to put in any comments. At the end, I'm going to ask you to share with us one feature of the SpeedGrader that you might start using. So if you see a feature that you've not used, just go ahead and put that in the chat as we go through. Nicole is on, and she's my co-host. So, and let's see, I need to make sure that I've made her co-host. Okay, she's co-host now, and she will be watching the chat and letting us know if there are any questions as we go through as well. So we're going to hop right over into Canvas, and I've created a sandbox for us. So the first thing I want to show is some settings that you may or may not be familiar with when it comes to your grades. So Canvas offers this option where we can either post grades immediately as things are graded, or we can hide grades until we're ready to release those or show those. So I want to show when I'm in grades, and again, I'm in a sandbox. I have some test students. I've placed Nicole in here too, so we have some work to look at today. So when you're in grades, if you hover over this gear in the top right corner, of course, there are some options for putting in some late policies, but I want to focus today on your grade posting policy. And this is where you would set your grade posting policy for your course. So if you're the type of person who likes to work ahead on your grading as students are submitting things before the due date, and you want to go ahead and get a jump start on your grading, but you don't yet want to release those grades to students, you can click manually post grades. And that means that you can go ahead and grade, you can see the feedback, you can use all the features of SpeedGrader, you will see the grade in the gradebook, but the student will not. They will see that it's graded and hidden, and then when you're ready, you can then manually release those grades. If that isn't an option that you prefer, you can go ahead and at the course level, select automatically post grades. Now, if there are just some grades that you would like to post manually, maybe it's a big project and students are working ahead and you don't want some students to see feedback that other students have been given before that due date, you can go ahead and select automatically post grades, and then per assignment, you can select the manually post grades. So I'll show you that. So I'm going to go ahead and manually post grades. That means they won't release until I've released them. Now we can see with this 1.3 test assignment, this one has the I with a slash through it. That means those grades are hidden until I release them or post them. So when I click on the three dots next to the assignment in grades, I can post my grades when I'm ready. If they were, if my grades were shown, if I had things graded that were shown, this would say hide grades. So that just tells you where those options are. Now, there are some other options that I just want to talk about real briefly. It's kind of outside the scope of today, but I wanted to let you know that there's a really handy feature in here that is message students who. So when you click message students who, you can, this is part of grading feedback, right? We can email students who haven't submitted or scored less than a certain percent, or scored more than. If you want to, everybody who scored a 90 or better, you want to give them some kudos. So you can message your students, and your students would populate in here to message students in bulk. Of course, you'd be messaging them in bulk, and they would each individually receive that communications from you. So a couple ways you can get into SpeedGrader is per assignment from grades, which is right here. I can click and go to SpeedGrader there. I can also, if I'm on my home and let's see, I want to go into my modules. Let's say I was inside checking out one of my assignments. I can also get to SpeedGrader here. So I can see that I have 1 out of 2 of my students' submissions graded. So I'm going to go ahead and click on SpeedGrader. That's going to take me right into the SpeedGrader. And I want to give you just a quick tour. This is probably very familiar to a lot of you, but I'm going to go through some of these features a little more in depth than maybe you've seen in the past. So up here in the burgundy top bar, we have the little notebook with the check. That will return us to the grade book. You can see the I with a slash. If your settings are currently set to automatically post grades, you'll just see the I. If you have changed the option to post grades manually, that's where you'll see the I with the slash. If the slash is over, that just means that there are some grades, at least one grade in here that's not been released. Here you see the name of the assignment, the due date. You might even see points available. And then this section here, 1 out of 2. So I have 2 students in here. I've graded 1. And you can see that the average score for the entire class is 32 out of 50 or 64%. And I am currently on student 2 of 2. So if I hit the arrow to go back or forward, you can see I'm on student 1 of 2. So if you have 10 students in here and you see 9/10, that means you're on the 9th student in your list of 10. So I can toggle back and forth using the side-to-side arrows. And I can also click on the student's name. And I can see all of my students here. So I only have 2 in here at this point. Nicole, do we have a question in the chat? Oh, Heather, yes, impressive. My paper is in Latin, right? I use a dummy text generator to create some documents for us.
Good. Sorry, I got the history nerd in me. Found that funny.
I love it. Great. Okay, so now you see Nicole has an orange dot next to her name. That simply means that I've not graded her work. If there was nothing next to her name, it would mean that she hadn't submitted anything yet. And then you can see the test student has a check. That means I've graded that student's work. I'm going to go ahead and go back to my student, Sleepy Tester. And another thing that I can do here is drag this bar. Depending on my real estate here that I have on my screen, I'm currently on a small laptop. So as I'm reading the paper, I may need to drag that over so that I can zoom in and out and see a little bit better. So that would be this zoom feature here. If I'm ready to go ahead and pay attention to a rubric, I could come over here and make this a little bit bigger, and then I have more real estate to work with. So I'm just going to leave that kind of in a happy medium there. Okay, now I want to focus on this rubric bar here for a minute on the right-hand side of the screen. So you can see the student submitted this February 15th at 10:13 a.m. And we have this little pencil icon. You may or may not have noticed that. Here you can designate, it'd be like writing on the top of the student's paper, late or excused or none, if you didn't want to make a comment. If you come in here and a student hasn't submitted and you're ready to go ahead and grade, you could mark it as missing and give a 0 grade. You'd have to do that manually to give a 0. So that's this feature here. It's just kind of like denoting a little note on that particular document. You can see the Turnitin information here. So if I click that, I'm not going to today, but if I click that, it will populate open Turnitin. Keep in mind that at SNU, we don't have a threshold percent with Turnitin. This is kind of an aside conversation, but sometimes some faculty are confused that, you know, if it, obviously this is 85 because I have some dummy text in here, but let's say it's 20%. That's only really an issue if the student has not cited or used references or APA formatting for the items that they've included. So it's really important that we click that Turnitin similarity report to go in and see what's happening. It might also be an issue if you've asked students to please not quote more than a certain percent of their paper. But as long as they have the citations in there and they're following APA, you know, then that would be a judgment call as you look at their work. You could say something like, please include more of your original thought rather than so much citing or quoting. But you really want to dig into that report to actually see what's going on. Now, if you go in there and it's 10%, but 10% is like copied from an internet site, or you have 10% not quoted or cited, you know, that's a whole nother issue. And then you need to focus in on helping students know what APA and how to cite those types of things. So here I could download Sleepy Tester's document. I could also throw it away if I wanted, but really we want to keep students' work in there. So we have a total box here, and that's where most of the time when you fill out the rubric, the score will automatically populate to this box. I have taught courses in the past where I have filled out the rubric and it doesn't populate to this box. So you always just want to double check this box to make sure the score that you've noted at the bottom of the rubric is indeed inside this square. I don't know the nuance of that issue, why it isn't sometimes, but most of the time it should be. So you can click to view the rubric, and that will simply expand your criteria, and it shows in each box what the levels are. Now, I can click to select, like if I know for sure I want to give 30 points or 21 points or 0, I can just simply click the box. But if a student is kind of in between two particular levels, I can give a manual score here. I can just type that in. I can also give comments here that are specific to this criterion. So I want to give comments if a student has scored in a certain area, you've taken off points. You want to use some of the language from this rubric and let students know why. So for example, if there was no analysis with deep thinking and reasoning, you might give a recommendation here for students to include more deep thinking and reasoning. When you're using the language here in this box that closely align with the boxes up here, students can see exactly where they're lacking. So it would be important to add a comment here. Let's see, so then I can just continue with the rubric, and I see 32 out of 50, and I'm just going to click save. And that's just one part of the grading here. I typically do the rubric last, so we're kind of going through this in reverse order. Another feature you can use here is the assignments area. So you see I have some comments added here already, and I have some general feedback that I find myself giving often to various students. And so I've created a comment library. and I include links to various resources. I always also give comments within the document, and I'm not sure students always check over in the document to look at my comments, especially if they can't see it on this first page. So I also have a comment saved in my comment library that says, please browse the document and the rubric to see my comments added throughout. So at least they're seeing that comment, and then hopefully that will guide them to look at the rubric and the document. So the comment library is simply this feature, and you can click to go into it right here with the little speech bubble, and then I can add and edit and delete comments that are in my comment library. So I could add a comment to my library down here, and it will save it for me. So I'm no longer typing again and again and again. Remember, you're highly encouraged to include outside sources for this paper, or please set an individual meeting during my office hours, or guiding them to the library and giving a link. And of course, APA style, we're making a lot of comments about that as well. So keep in mind, these are very general comments that I found myself typing again and again. And the links are not live links. It's simply text. So for example, I've said for the APA formatting one, I've said for APA formatting help, paste this APA style link into a web browser. So when I make that comment, it's not clickable. Canvas doesn't have that rich text editor in here. I imagine that they're probably working on that so that you can give live links to your students. You can also show suggestions when typing. So if I have, if I start typing remember in the comment box here, let's see, I'll just do that. Oops. And it'll pop up the one that I have that word in. So I could just then click it and add it. Oops, let me get my menu back. Okay. Let's see. So then another feature we have here is below the comment box, we have attach a file. So we could attach a file. Let's say you have a document where you have tips for writing for your class, Professor Lisa's class. You could, and you find yourself giving those recommendations again and again, you can attach a document. Maybe they couldn't find the APA template that you provided in the course. You could attach it right there. The media comment option here, that is for leaving students video feedback or audio feedback. So when you click to add media, it simply opens up your studio feature and you can record your media. So I recommend you play around with that a little bit. If you turn your webcam on, it's a video comment. And if you turn your webcam off, it's an audio comment. And that's sometimes confused with this next box here. This is actually speech to text. And it's not the greatest AI technology in here. It's not like, I don't think it's as clean as voice to text on your phone, for example. So when I'm talking, it's going to just capture what I'm saying, period, and it will include the information for the student, period. So that's how it looks. So if you are like, if typing is slower for you, you might try that speech recognition option there. I do want to mention here a little bit about the comments that we're adding for students. A friend of mine did some research on adult learners and self-efficacy specifically, and he found from adult learners that even when they score a high score, they long for comments from faculty on what they could do to improve. So we've all, many of us have taught adult learners who are eager and overachieving, and they really, really want to, score the best they can. And so even when we're giving them 100%, the research he did showed that those students are still wanting constructive feedback. So maybe you do give them a 100%, but what are some recommendations you could give for them to make their writing even better the next time? So just a fun tidbit to keep in mind. So as you're giving the numeric feedback for students in terms of their numeric score, it is really important to add comments as well. So, when you're adding comments in the rubric, adding those comments specifically to the criterion, that is helpful. And then adding your pre-written comments that you're giving to a lot of students is also important. But it's equally important, if not more important, to use this comment box for some global feedback too. And that might be encouragement or support. Like maybe you say, your writing is improving as we are progressing through the term. Keep it up. Great job. You might have improvement suggestions for the next paper that they're going to be writing. You might include resources that they could use. And basically comment on their overall growth through the term. So this is where you maybe use their name. You could say, Nicole, great job this week. I see that you've taken my feedback from last week and really implemented some changes this week. So hopefully that will help with, there's lots of places to add feedback, but what to put where. Okay, next I want to talk a little bit about this section over here. And I would really encourage you to use this annotation area. When we collect, the old school days when we collected printed papers in our classroom, it was very easy to take our red pen and write little things all over the student's paper, and the student could go through and see our comments compared to, in location, the items we were referring to. So while in the rubric, we can add some general comments about specific criterion, it's really important that we also use the annotation marks to show, circle things, underline things, highlight things, make comments that point to specific things in their paper so that they can actually see and make that connection of which parts of their paper your comments are referring to. So I'm just going to showcase some of these. And I'm going to talk first about this toolbar across the top. This is the annotation toolbar, and it's in this gray box across the top. Hopefully you can see my mouse as I'm going through. So I can download the student's paper here, and this would download an annotated PDF. So if I needed to somehow, for some reason, make the marks and download the paper to save it, maybe I'm collecting some assessment data, or maybe I want to make sure that the student is receiving, I could re-upload their annotated paper. So that's an option there. But keep in mind, if you download that, it's going to include all of your marks and comments. I can go forward and back in the student's document. I can also simply scroll to go through their document also. And I can see what page I'm on. I can zoom in and out. And I could make it full screen. And then this is simply my selection text. This is what it's on as I'm coming through, and that's simply just selecting things from myself. It doesn't make a mark on the student's paper, but that's just so maybe I can focus in visually on a particular part of the student's paper as I'm reading it. Then we have this option of dropping a little pin into their paper. And let's say I wanted to focus specifically on this word right here. And let's say it's this one word is vague. I can just drop a little pin and I can say vague term. Can you explain for the reader? And hit enter, and it just makes that little comment there. So that's the pin. I could also just point out maybe a paragraph in general, and I could make a comment about that paper. I have a highlighting tool, so I can highlight things in different colors. I like to highlight grammar and spelling errors in red, and typically I just select red, and if there was a specific word, a student knows that if something is highlighted in red, and then that means that there's an issue with that particular word. They know to look for grammar errors. And then I might, if there are a lot of them, I might even draw a line. Let's say I'm halfway through the paper, and I might say grammar and spelling notes above apply to the rest of the paper. That way I'm not, like if they have a word in there in particular that they've misspelled every single time, you could just make a note of that. You need to check the rest of your document too for that particular word, and that will shorten your time grading a little bit, or your time writing. You could change the color of your highlighting so that, you know, if you give students a code, red is grammar and spelling, and blue is everything else, and you can also add a comment to that so that they know. Okay. And then you can add in text. So for example, I added this paper as an improvement for last week's paper. I could also place that comment over in the comment box, but I just wanted to show that there is an option to give some overall feedback here, and you could drag that anywhere you want. You can also use the strikeout feature to strike out certain things. And then you would want to make a comment and say, this is repetitive, or this sentence actually belongs in the next paragraph. So you can note that as well. And then drawing, once I select this drawing icon, and this is pretty cool. So let's say I'm in this paragraph here, and there needed to be a citation here, and there needed to be a citation here. These circles are actually connected, and I can make one comment for both of those circles. And then once a student comes in and selects that particular comment, they can see all the places that I circled within that paragraph. And then there's also the box feature, which, let's say, for example, I used it up here. This actually needs to be on the title page. And I just want to check my notes here. So, so keep in mind as you are using the annotation tools, and you're also adding comments in the rubric, and you're adding comments using the comment feature, you want to make sure that you're including granular and global and general feedback for students, so they can kind of get a feel for what you thought about their assignment overall, the big picture. But then they also want to see that you've spent some time really working through their document and giving them very specific feedback throughout. Also, I encourage you to never assume your students are using or finding these comments. Some students just see the grade in the grade book, and they are pretty much, okay, I got a 72, but they don't dig in to the actual graded document. So if you're on campus and you have a space and time in the classroom, pull up or have them pull up their own Canvas course and show them, have them walk through and look at the rubric and look at the paper with the annotations. You kind of have to train them to get in here and take a look at the comments that you've added so they can get into that habit. If you're an online faculty member, I encourage you to make an announcement, and you can. So when I go to publish these grades, I just hit the little I and I post grades, and there's one hidden. Do I want to release them for everyone or just the person I graded? And I'll just say graded, and I'm going to post. The students will get a notification that their work has been graded. That's a great time to go in and post an announcement and say, I've finished grading work for week 1 test assignment. Be sure to review the rubric and my annotations within your document so that you can make improvements for later assignments. So don't assume they know. This is a lot of work to put into giving students feedback, and you want to make sure they're seeing that feedback and using it. So post an announcement. If you're in class, pull it up in class and kind of walk through it with them. I do also want to talk about one more feature here, and I'm not seeing it in this particular assignment. So I'm going to go down here. I don't see it here either, which is very odd. And maybe it's outside of because this is a test environment, but I do want to point this out because I don't see it here, but you may see in your course, and I want you to go check this out. There should be a reassign this assignment option down below here. And let me just make sure it's not anywhere else. Yes, it may be because this is a test, a sandbox, and I don't have actual start and end dates. But if you click the reassign this assignment, the assignment will populate back to the student's to-do list. So they'll see it as though they hadn't yet submitted to that assignment. So let's say a student is working ahead of a due date and they submit a paper like really early because they're getting ready to travel, or they're not going to be in class, or they have a work commitment. And let's say their work is extremely subpar, but they still have time before the due date. Or it's a student that you've been working with to improve and they've submitted by the due date, but you're really trying to work with them and help them improve. So you want to give them another chance to submit that again. So you can click reassign. It will populate back to the student's to-do list, and make sure you've added a comment using the comment feature to explain what they could work on and why you're reassigning it to them, and maybe a due date. So please submit this by, next Wednesday for a regrade. Okay, thank you, David. David says he sees it in his courses. I assume you're referring to the reassign submission. So that's a nice feature, especially when you're working with students on those. So here you can see some of my video comments I made. I won't press the play because you can see that I'm back there. This is how an audio comment would show up for students, and this is how a attachment would show up for students. You can see some comments there. So what feature in SpeedGrader will you start using? Were there any features here that I pointed out today that you were unfamiliar with or haven't been using that you think you might use? This is time to give me feedback on this presentation to let me know if it was helpful. Annotations, thank you, David. Good, a good refresher. Thanks, Laura. Yeah, the comment library, thank you, Heather. That does save a lot of time typing, especially offering like links to APA and those sorts of things. Awesome. So I hope this was a great refresher and maybe just confirmation that you're using all the tools. And I appreciate that feedback. And I'll put in a little plug for next week or next month. Next month's Lunch with Lynn will be specifically for online faculty who are teaching in courses that are built by the instructional designers in the Center for Learning and Innovation. Those faculty are given pre-built courses, and I'm going to talk a little bit about tips and strategies for personalizing that pre-built course so you can put your face and voice into those pre-built courses. So thank you so much. I appreciate your time. I hope you found this valuable.